This is how to make a supernova, and today we're going to make some desert rocks out of foam. My friends, good to have you back because today we're going to make some amazing desert rocks. With some very simple techniques and some paint you get a very realistic result. And one of the best things is that you can use some scrap pieces of foam. So let's get building. The first thing that we need to do is to make our rock wall, and to do that we're going to glue some foam pieces together. These are all scrap parts from other projects, and I'm going to use a hot glue gun to glue them together. When you use a hot glue gun, make sure you are putting the glue on the back side of your project and not in the front. I will make a test piece and then later you will understand what I mean, why you don't want glue in the front. This is our test piece to show you why you don't want glue all the way on the foam. So this is just for demonstration purposes. Don't actually do this. The next thing we're going to do is to take a sharp knife and we're going to make cuts at an angle. I like to use 45 degrees, but you can choose which angle you like. But make sure your knife is sharp. When you don't use a sharp knife, you can see that the knife rips the foam. This is not what you want. You want straight, clean cuts. You can't really do this wrong, just make a lot of cuts in the same direction. Cutting this test piece was a lot more difficult than cutting the actual project, and this is our first problem when you use hot glue everywhere. When you're cutting the foam, you're actually cutting inside the hot glue, and that's why these cuts are not as clean as the other project. This is how the foam looks right now, and you can see that some of the lines I cut are crossing each other, but that's not a problem. Just make sure all your cuts are in the same general direction and you'll be fine. The next thing what we need to do is to scrape away some foam, and the best things you can use is a flat tool. You can use a screwdriver or this is a modeling tool, and both work great. Pointy tools don't really work for this, so stay with the flat tools. Before we can move to the next step, we need to get rid of all these loose pieces. So what I like to do is to use an old toothbrush, or you can use an old paintbrush if you like, and just brush it in the same direction as the cuts, and then you can see most of the loose parts will come off. Here you can see the second problem with our test piece. The hot glue between the foam layers is protecting the foam. I was scratching, but suddenly I couldn't scratch anymore because the hot foam was blocking. And now I have this weird height difference here I don't want. Also here it's very visible. I was scratching like this, touching the foam, and I couldn't scratch anymore. And these height differences really will ruin the look you're going for. To smoothen out all the cuts we made, I'm going to use a hot air gun and melt the top layer of the foam a little. When you do this outside or in a well-ventilated area, because the fumes are not very healthy for you. You could also use a small torch, but I think the hot air gun is way safer. My apologies for the quality of the footage, because I'm still figuring out how I could film outside in the evening. This is the result of the hot air gun, and as you can see here and here, the foam got a little bit too hot, and now we can see the edges from the different parts of the foam. But that's not a problem, because I'm going to fill it with some sculpting mold or some wall filler, scratch in the same pattern, and it won't be visible anymore. And when that's done, I'm going to cover it in a thin layer of plaster. I'm going to do that for two reasons. One is protection, because right now all these parts are a little crispy, and especially the thin parts can break off very easily. And the second reason is to smoothen it out a little bit more, because now I have these very sharp lines and I want them to be a little bit more dull. Here you can see the third problem of our test piece. The hot glue protected the foam. So the foam in the middle melted more than the foam on all the edges. Also, the hot glue has been pouring out of all the seams, so I have this glue edge all over. Yeah, this is not what we can use for our project. This is useless, so I'm going to throw this away. I just added a foam base and now we can work on our project again with the plaster. The plaster is a little bit runny, but that's exactly what you want, because when it's too thick you're going to cover up all your details and that's not what you want. To apply the plaster I'm going to use a large brush and a smaller one. The large brush is to apply the plaster on our project. It just goes a lot faster. I use a small one to make sure there's not pooling any plaster anywhere. To get some height difference on the ground, I applied a thin layer of sculpture mold. And when all the foam was covered, I pressed in some plaster rocks to get some more variety. I left the sculpture mold to dry overnight and the next day it was ready. I applied a coat of watered down PVA glue, sprinkled on some small rocks and then covered it with sand. And if you like my video so far, I hope you like and subscribe, because I have a lot of more cool content I want to share with you. For this diorama, I'm going to use this Mandalorian model. The link for the STL file is in the video description. When the model was glued, I gave the whole thing a coat with some Vallejo black primer. And then all the brown parts got a coat with Vallejo charred brown, and I highlighted it with Vallejo dark red. All the shiny parts, I painted it with Vallejo's Model Air Steel. And this paint is actually meant for your airbrush, but it's really a joy to apply it with a normal brush. It is very smooth and doesn't leave any brush strokes. I lost the footage from the black wash I used, but it's a really important step and it makes it all work. We're going to cover everything with this warm light gray color. It's made of cheap crafting paints. It's a lot of white paint, a drop of yellow, brown, black, and some water mixed in. And with some cheap crafting paints and a lot of water, I made this brown color I call, "Dude, there's way too much milk in my coffee," trademark. For the second color, I added a drop of yellow and a lot of white, and I call it, "Did you even put any coffee in there?" trademark. I used a big brush to apply the first color, and because there is a lot of water in our paint mix, it is very easy to apply. When that was dry, I used our second paint mix and covered about 70 to 80%. And to get some more interesting color, I used some black wash in some recesses. And for the finishing touch, I'm going to dry brush it with some Citadel Tyrant Skull. And the same process can be used to make some hills for some tabletop games. I also layered some foam, carved in the pattern, and now I'm in the process of painting the whole thing. My friends, thank you for watching, and if you want to see another video about a desert theme, I suggest you watch this video, or maybe this one is more interesting for you. See you next time.